Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women Redefining podcast, where women throughout Alberta are talking about how they are redefining entrepreneurship. My name is Stephanie Baker-Hoff, and I am the podcast producer for this amazing series brought to you by the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, or WEC for short. Your hosts for this podcast are Anita Kemp and Shannon Peston. Anita is the program leader for WEC Alberta, based out of Mount Royal University, and Shannon Peston is WEC's Senior Advisor for Business and Finance. WEC is part of the federal government's Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, investing $5 billion with the goal of doubling the number of women entrepreneurs in Canada by 2025. Led out of Ryerson University, there are 10 regional hubs across the country sharing research on and resources for women entrepreneurs in Canada. Drawing on the expertise of a network that includes more than 250 organizations, WEC also hosts and supports programming that highlights opportunities and best practices for women entrepreneurs and the organizations that support them. Through Women Redefining, we capture insightful and inspiring conversations to raise awareness throughout Alberta's entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem, and raise the profiles of women entrepreneurs and their businesses so that we can continue to challenge the existing stereotypes of entrepreneurs and share firsthand how women are thinking, being, and doing entrepreneurship in Alberta. Before we dive into this episode, I invite you to take a moment to be fully present and recognize the many traditional lands on which we are connecting, and acknowledge with gratitude and respect the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples whose footsteps were first to mark these lands.
Hello and welcome to the Women Redefining podcast. My name is Anita Kemp and I am the Alberta Program Lead for the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. Here with me today is Lara Murphy. Lara is the co-founder and director of business development and strategy of Lara Murphy Construction, where she has managed numerous multi-million-dollar projects in corporate, commercial, healthcare, and residential construction. Lara has always focused on a cooperative leadership style to create a more transparent and educational company within the industry, emphasizing that open and positive communication are paramount. Lara Murphy Construction is the only female-owned commercial construction firm in Calgary, working with businesses like the Calgary TELUS Convention Centre, Canadian Rocky Mountain Resorts, Sheraton, TELUS Spark, Undercard Boxing Studio, Junction 9, Village Ice Cream, Gravity Cafe, and the Vin Room. Lara Murphy Construction has been recognized nationally as one of the country's fastest growing companies and featured in publications such as Canadian Business, the Globe and Mail, Maclean's Magazine, Report on Business, Alberta Venture, and Business in Calgary. Lara is a public speaker who has participated in numerous panels and regularly gives talks about leadership, entrepreneurship, the construction industry, and women in business. Outside of work, Lara loves giving back to her community, where she volunteers for various nonprofit organizations. Advocating for vulnerable women and supporting younger entrepreneurs are two areas she is passionate about. Lara is currently Calgary YWCA's board chair, a board member of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and a member of State's Board of Governors, to name a few. Through her company, Lara is also proud to contribute to several community initiatives by partnering with organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club, United Way, Scotiabank Charity Marathon, Cerebral Palsy Kids, Fast and Female, and the Inglewood Community Association. Born in St. John, New Brunswick, Lara is a graduate of Mount Allison University, and a history of successful business startups have fed her entrepreneurial and compassionate spirit. She has been married for 7 years, and in her spare time, she loves to travel, ski, garden, read, and enjoy Calgary's river path. Welcome, Lara.
That was a mouthful. Thank you, Anita. It's great to be here.
Yeah, that is one impressive bio.
I'll give you your $20 later. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and it tells us about what you do and all about Lara Murphy Construction. But now I want to invite you to tell us the story behind your entrepreneurial venture, or perhaps your ventures, and start from wherever you like and bring us to where you're at today.
Wow. How much time did you say we have? I'm just kidding. So thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a huge fan, as you know. We met several years ago, I believe, when you were doing your dissertation. So it's great to be able to have this conversation. And I know we've had several over the years. And I appreciate all you do. As far as my entrepreneurial journey, I guess it did start at quite a young age. I had a sort of a different and very curiosity that was, I guess, directed towards construction and architecture from quite a young age. And my mom was very supportive, and my dad, in allowing me to explore that curiosity, whether that meant anything from trying to hang a light fixture to doing landscaping, painting, etc. So lots of learning along the way. And I guess really became that kid in the neighborhood that did all of the projects and had the shovel, the lawnmowers, the ladders, and would work for hire. So I really enjoyed that part of it. I found it fascinating, and I really enjoyed the client part of that full circle, doing a job, a small project, and getting paid. And so officially, when I was 16 years old, I went and bought the shiniest, brightest pieces of paper I could and printed out several flyers and went door to door promoting my first business. And it was called Handy Student Maintenance. So that was a few years ago. And I was out of my comfort zone, which I think I still am to this day in business almost every day. And I think that's an important part of learning for any human, in business or not. So that was really where it began. And I know my mom will share that I really always talked about wanting to have X-ray vision so I could understand how things were built, whether that was my school, the church we went to, or just our home. And from there, I literally just worked every summer as hard as I could, doing odd jobs. And my portfolio started to expand until I was doing things like gel coat on yachts, the teak on yachts, starting to build things a little bit larger, decks and painting. And then I was fortunate to have quite a different experience with sport. And around the same age, actually, about 16, I chose soccer as sort of my sport of choice, if you will, and decided to focus on that primarily. And a few months later, I was fortunate enough to been recruited to go to England. And I'll never forget that was when phones were still attached to the wall, and my mom running into the washroom. I was in the tub at the time and saying, "Lara, there's a man with a British accent on the phone who wants to talk to you about soccer." And sure enough, that was a recruiter, and he was asking if I would go to England to play, and with another friend of mine who we were on the same high school team. So the reason I share that, Anita, is more that it started a journey for me in sport, in leadership, but also in just solidifying my love for travel and also construction and architecture. So getting to go across the pond and play at that young age gave me a whole new understanding and perspective. Because one thing that I will say through the last 15 months of the pandemic, if anything, I do believe it's given everyone a different perspective and a time to really reflect and push pause. We had no choice. So it forced us almost to really look inward and think about, what we were doing, who we were doing it with, but then why. And for me, it really had a big impact this last year and a half. And I'll continue to cherish that time and really build on it. But that was a moment for me as a young woman. It was exactly the same. And really, it was in my fourth year of university, playing soccer very competitively. A soccer coach just said to me, his name's Graham Chandler, and I've reached out to him in the interim. And he said, "Lara, you do this every summer. Why wouldn't you consider a career in construction?" And I was hell-bent on being a lawyer. I wanted to study environmental law, and he planted a seed that changed the trajectory of my life. And for me now, when I am asked to go speak or meet someone that's maybe just graduating from SAIT, or talk to someone that's looking at starting a business, I'll never forget his words, because it's incredible. A few a few small words or a conversation can really impact someone for better or for worse, depending on what it is they're looking to do. So it was really where I had my grounding, and I did play quite competitively, and it built a lot of my resiliency and I think the leadership around what it takes to be a business owner and understand what teamwork really is. And I cherish all of those memories, and it did build that tenacity that's talked about so much in business. So from that point, I had hung up my super duper competitive cleats and moved back to St. John, New Brunswick, where I was born, and managed to buy an older home. And in St. John, I mean, you will appreciate this being from where you are, but that means 1830. So I had this older home and started to fix it up. And as people would come to visit and see the place, it was a grand, old, gorgeous double parlor. You know, there was no MDF in the entire home. I went sort of room by room, and I didn't have any money to hire any trades. So it was really me learning. And from there, I started to fall in love with historical restoration work. And that was really where I started to do it more and more full time. And in 2005, I had a friend who was getting married in Calgary, and I came to her wedding and met someone. And that was actually what brought me to Calgary. So here we are 16 years later, and really had to start over in Calgary. And it was a time of complete and utter chaos, especially coming from New Brunswick, where things are more slow and steady. I walked into literally baptism by fire in this city. It was a busy, busy boom time. And I do sometimes miss those days, but nevertheless, it taught me a lot and really gave me the confidence that anything could be possible. So after a short stint as a project manager with a development company, I decided to break out onto my own and started a small firm where I was mostly doing renovation work, some small commercial projects, but mostly renovation work, and living in Inglewood, where it is the oldest community in Calgary. I fell back into doing the historical restoration. So it was during that time I traveled to Banff to do a small project there, and I met Karen Ryan, and within a few minutes we were having these robust discussions on our experience in construction and what we had experienced ourselves, but also where we thought we could improve, and some of the hurdles and hiccups that we'd had, I guess, the pleasure of learning and growing through, because you definitely, when things are going well, you at least I tend not to learn as much as when things are a bit rough. So within a few months, we founded Lara Murphy Construction, and Karen moved from Montreal to Calgary. And within 2 weeks of our incorporation, the financial markets crashed, and most of the clients that we had secured were big retailers from the US that were looking to expand to Canada and Calgary, and they all just disappeared. So quite quickly, we were left, as most entrepreneurs are at the beginning stages. You have this grand vision and it never quite goes according to plan, but we decided at that point that we were going to have to be the boots on the ground. So literally we went onto the tools ourselves and did the work. And we have funny memories, so many of, you know, whether it was us standing in a bathtub together, tiling a wall and just laughing, or really difficult, physically challenging situations where there were no margins, and we certainly couldn't afford the trades at that time. So it gave us an opportunity to learn about one another, our skill sets, what we liked doing and what we didn't. But most importantly, it gave us the courage to continue on. And we both knew that if we could get through that, we could, you know, continue on this crazy dream of building this construction company. So it was really, that was the beginning. And bit by bit, we would get our foot in the door, and just every job we completed, we were on to the next. And we were so not lucky, but just very, very fortunate in the people that we met in this city and how it embraced us. And as you know, a huge entrepreneurial culture here. So as we churned out the jobs, they kept coming, and the word of mouth helped. And people literally would go out of their way to really promote us, because we were quite an anomaly in the space we were working in as two female founders working in construction. And it was really incredible. And bit by bit, we just kept gaining that traction. But it did take 5 years for us to hire our first employee, and we spent a lot of time working in our basements. And it's interesting, because now as we come out of the pandemic, and certainly during the last 15 months, working more and more at home, it did give me some flashbacks of those early days. But we just never stopped believing in what we wanted to accomplish and to make a real change in the industry, and something that was focused more on the trust and education and problem solving, and offering a safe space for the trades to know they could come and do their work and have that satisfaction and really promote them. And it's just been a wonderful journey. So now we've been in a couple of different offices. We've moved in the last year and a half to a beautiful new warehouse space, and have an incredible team that I couldn't be more proud of. And we were fortunate to work with so many entrepreneurs and some of the businesses you mentioned in the intro that sometimes I do have to pinch myself, because it's all a bit surreal. And as you know, you accomplish one goal and you move on to the next and the next, and you just keep moving forward. And I think it's just really always having that growth mindset that helps set that stage, and not being afraid to ask for help when needed. And certainly I did that very, very much along the way.
Wow, I never get tired of hearing
You've heard it a lot.
I love, and I, I hate to say it, my favorite part is that, and then the markets crashed, and then, and I think it's, when people look at you now, you and Karen and your organization now, right? It's great to hear the story of where you came from, right? So as people are listening to this and thinking, they're comparing their chapter 1 to your chapter 20, right? It's you had a chapter 1 too at some point,
without a doubt, and many, many moments of not knowing if this was the right thing, or if we would be able to carry on, and just really having the support at home, certainly with our partners, and again, just learning how to lean into different organizations and associations within the city that can help you learn and grow as a business owner and entrepreneur. But yeah, there's lots of lessons learned. And actually, it's funny, I look back and think, so the financial downturn and then the flood happened in 2013, and then the oil and gas downturn, and now here we are on hopefully the other side of the pandemic. And we've been in business more in a crisis than not. And I think that when you really think about that and what that means as a business owner and entrepreneur, I mean, I can't say enough for the team we have in the city that we're so fortunate to live in, and province and countries that we've been able to not just survive, but thrive through all of those experiences and learn and grow. There have been some hard knocks, but it's incredible when you think of, and I look around me at my peers and other individuals that have done the exact same. It's very inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some of the well-known names in that list that we're, as locals, familiar with.
Absolutely.
And you talked about, those people that kind of supported you and inspired you. So I just want to kind of dig deeper on that. So who would you say, has inspired you the most throughout this journey?
There have been so many people that have been, yourself. I look at Shannon Peston, I look at Simon, I look at so many of the leaders around the city, and even the people that perhaps reach out to me, looking to me as a mentor. I learn more from them. I'm sure of it. And it's a way that I feel that once I gave that total surrender, and I mean that total surrender, that things fell into place in a way that I can't really put into words. It's hard to describe unless you go through something, and it doesn't have to just be with business, but in your work life, in school, in your home life, with a sport, with a book, a passion project, any of those things that if you really truly give it the best you can, it's incredible. And it may not always work out the way that you envision, but if you can continue to move forward on that path and think about the big picture while still having your eye on the prize and understanding how things work within your organization, it helps. And really finding the mentors that aren't just your cheerleaders, but the ones that know your business, that understand the city, and that can offer you that advice and guidance to propel you to that next level. We can talk about reinvention and shifting. And I had a great quote I read yesterday about the Pride Parade, and the president of Pride said, "Well, we're not having it this year. We don't pivot, we sashay." And I thought, okay, it's just brilliant. I have to use it. So it is really about that, and having the confidence behind who you are as a person. And we are an anomaly, but until we really started telling our story, Anita, we didn't actually understand that really we were the authentic diversity and inclusion and equity before the conversation really started for sure in Canada. I think they're a little bit ahead of us in the US and some other countries, but that was just who we were. And so when you kind of lead from that authentic place, and I'm not, I'm not replacing doing heart transplants, so it's not lost on me, but when you can lead from an authentic place, it becomes infectious, and to support and see other people reach the potential that they maybe wouldn't have thought of. And if I can tell them the story of like, hey, that Swiss chalet on Memorial Drive, well, Karen and I changed the toilets in that Swiss chalet. It feels like not that long ago. And so it's just a testament to just trying to do the best you can with what you were given, and find the people around you that fill in the gaps, because we can't do it all the time. But recognizing that you need a sense of not just maturity within your own self to be somewhat vulnerable, but an understanding of what you need in order to propel that business forward, and look at ways that you can become more efficient, and find like people with different ideas and different backgrounds. I mean, to bring those people together with shared goals, it's unbelievable. And that's really what I feel we have with our team and moving forward. And we do have a finite time in history that we're all a part of right now, to be able to do that for our city, and to be able to look and pick our chins up. It's like, okay, like we got this. And I mean, the first week I lived in Calgary, I'll never forget walking down Stephen Avenue. And Lord knows I was probably listening to Nelly Furtado, but with an old iPod, first generation, that my friends got me before I moved to Calgary. And you just, this energy, it gave me chills, because it was so much was happening, and it was just this amazing feeling. And I think if you can try to really figure out as an individual what prompts that in you, and it's not typically for me sitting in front of a screen or writing an email, it's when I'm out for a run, or I'm listening to a good song, or perhaps I'm on vacation, and I can't wait for those days again when you can get on a plane and do that. But it's reading a book, whatever the case is, to try to really find that creative outlet that allows you to think in a way that's not so in the box, because so much of, in particular in construction, I mean, it's a siloed industry. And it's one that has the organizations themselves are the linchpins that we can change. So, and imagine a construction site being a safe place for a trans person. Like, just imagine that. And like that's what we want. Like, that's what I want to create. I want a place where a young woman would say, you know what, I'd like to be a project manager and look towards something. Like, it'd be really cool if I could do a project at Telespark. And most of who we work with today in our own organization are probably the second or third iterations of their careers, and so diverse, like from paleontologist to philosophy degree to someone that owned a pizza shop. And they somehow we've all found ourselves together in this moment in time. So it's not lost on me in many ways, but really looking at how you can gather that together and have those diverse perspectives and just really morph those into some really great ideas.
Yeah, I mean, even way back when we had our early conversations as well, it was really about, you're talking about kind of like disrupting the industry, but disrupting it through like values, right? Bringing in the value, like the trust and the safe spaces, and and that has always come through.
And it's a really important part, and I can't say enough about the people that I have the pleasure of working with every day, and not just our internal team, but the architects and the designers and tradespeople that have put forward their livelihoods and careers in order to accomplish all of that and build those projects that you speak of, and build our city quite literally. And I think it is really, built into the DNA. You just really need to continue to move forward and have those high standards of value. And once people recognize that, it makes the conversation a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, just want to touch, on the name, Ryan Murphy Construction. I mean, logically it's, it's your last name, Karen's last name, but, like but we're on the surface of it, so can you kind of give us some, I don't know, maybe some insight into your intentions behind that, and really kind of what happened in those early days? We all know now Ryan Murphy is, women-owned business, but in those early days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it starts with a couple of women at the pub, and I kid you not, we literally went down to the local watering hole, Karen and I and my partner Livia, and we were discussing all of these different names, looking at acronyms and ways that we could find a name that would really grab a hold. And then Liv just turned and said, well, why not Ryan Murphy? Sounds like a dude. Maybe that's not a bad start. And I mean, sadly, it's interesting. I mean, at the time, it was like a light bulb. Oh my God, that's brilliant. Yes, let's do it. It gets our foot in the door, and there's no preconceived notions prior to us just being able to show all clients that we know our craft. And I mean, and the funny part is, honestly, at least a couple times a year, we'll still get a call to the office for someone looking for Ryan, or is Ryan my husband? And it's great, and it reminds me, and it's always a fun conversation explaining, no, there's no Ryan. Well, what do you mean? Well, no, there's no, it's our last name. Well, oh, that's awesome. It's inevitably women. So it's always a fun thing. And it does keep us grounded in the sense of, when I think back to those early days, just what that meant and where we came to that place. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I do hope one day that being a female in this industry is not something that even needs to be discussed. I hope that it's just a commonplace, and it's a way that we can all move forward as a collective, but there's still work to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we want to move on now to kind of the idea of the stereotypes, and how that's a really good segue, that the Ryan Murphy construction, but it also those conversations as well, like you can hear the awareness shift in their voice, and so it is, it does have a positive impact too, right? Like, because people recognize their own unconscious bias around that. And so, just moving on to the idea of the stereotypes in entrepreneurship. So the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is running a campaign called See It, Be It. We're showcasing successful women entrepreneurs like yourself and Karen, right, with the goal of challenging these stereotypes, right? And I'm curious, how do you think we should be challenging these stereotypes around what an entrepreneur or even an entrepreneurial venture looks like?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that, but it's about being an ally. And I mean that in every sense of the word. It's about getting people to get things done and to stop. There's so much paperwork and processes and procedures that it just becomes this bottleneck of things never getting to change. Or there is a certain amount of tokenism that goes into checking certain boxes, if you will. So I think the conversation really needs to be around, how can we support every career path and make that change, and look, and if it's something that I can give or refer to someone else, or give that encouragement, like, and being open to, what are you nervous looking at your financials? Do you understand a P&L? Who can we get to help? And what can we do to bolster that? I mean, you look at the facts and the return on investment for businesses that are represented by the underrepresented, and there's no question, dollar and cents wise, it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the economy, and it's a good thing for society. The pandemic has disproportionately affected women. And that's something that I get chills thinking about it, to be honest, because it will be a time where we all more than ever need to really look at, okay, first of all, how can we never have that happen again? What can we do to protect the frontline workers? How can we give women in particular better childcare? How can we offer a place where they can come and work and be satisfied and feel that they're making a difference without going through so many hoops where it's just sometimes easier to not bother? So I think there's so much around that, and it really does. We're so much better as a collective, so much better. And to look, and I mean, through this pandemic, I've been in the midst of so many discussions that without that lens, I don't know that they would have happened, or if they did, it probably would have taken me 5 more years. We get so caught up, and even me gets so caught up just in the day-to-day, and there is ego as part of it. You're building something, and so, but to be able to kind of shed those layers and look and see, okay, how can we do this better? And how can we make this a better place? And I will say the early days of the pandemic, the Calgary Construction Association was incredible. I mean, Bill was on almost every day with Michelle from Elevated, and they did webinars and sessions, panel discussions. I mean, we had people in tears. We didn't know what was going to happen from day to day. We were all struggling. How do we make the protocols and put them in place? It was so unknown, and the industry did really come together in sharing protocols and the information in a way that I had never seen before. But it's something like that, and we never got shut down. And so when you see those examples of what can be done, I mean, the world was able to create a vaccine as fast as it was, and so when the collective group and society as a whole makes that shift, it's unstoppable. And I think of one wonderful book that I'm reading right now by Adam Grant called Think Again. And it's so much that you touched on, the unconscious bias and just how can we unthink? I mean, we're such creatures of habit, but in order to really learn and understand, you need to sit in a room with people that have differing opinions. It's not Xing out of something that makes you uncomfortable or tuning out or arguing. It's really taking the time to understand a perspective and what that means and the value that people can bring. So I would highly recommend that. I mean, his first book was called The Originals, which is also fantastic, but he comes at it from a sort of psychology background and really gives some great situational examples of people in life and how people were able to pivot and think differently, and what that did in the long term to really shape society in a way that we all currently benefit from.
Mm-hmm. I've wrote that down. You always recommend really good books.
Bit of a nerd.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think like through COVID, it's, the gaps were always there, and through COVID, these gaps were magnified, right? And even down to like the government support, that certain businesses didn't early on fit in the mold of even getting the financial support early on. I mean, that did change fairly quickly, which was really positive. But it is, like, taking a look at the system and where are the gaps and what are some of the biggest changes, and for you, even as a growing business, as you were growing and getting access to financial capital and having the right contacts and the right networks, that all those things are super important, and where the gaps are for women to tackle. So it's another reason why we're having these conversations.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look in the future. Let's grab the crystal ball for a second. When you look at the future, what does success look like for you, Lara, and for Ryan Murphy Construction?
I mean, that is a great question. And backtracking, there was no financial capital available, by the way. So Karen and I to date have never had a loan. So that I hope that changes. But we, for the future, quite frankly, on a personal level, I would love, we didn't have anyone to look up to that was doing what we were doing in the space we were working in. And so that, I think, took us, by the nature of that beast, it just took us a little longer to figure out how to navigate the waters, because we didn't have any female, in particular, entrepreneurs in the space. And I didn't really know that many construction general contractors or people that initially I could reach out to learn. So being able to offer that to young people, however they identify, would be, for me, the most satisfying piece of legacy, in the sense that they may not choose to go forward in construction, but perhaps it's in a different business or in an entrepreneurial journey, or dream a little bigger than what they originally may have thought they were capable of. And that's really what it boils down to. We all think about ourselves and what we can do and where we visualize ourselves in 2021, 2022. And it's that ability to not necessarily feel that you have to go with what just seems to fit. And that would give me the greatest satisfaction, to be able to help younger individuals embrace and take a chance and look at things in a way that is not necessarily the status quo. Maybe look at the trades and maybe have your own business. Can you go get a ticket? What is it that you're looking to do? And so for sure, on that level, that giving back and really help to bolster that younger generation of entrepreneurs, whatever they choose to work within. It is by and large, like it fuels me, it gets me going, even just thinking about it. From a big picture, no doubt we will be the largest construction company in Canada owned by women.
I'm cheering. I'm doing a silent cheer.
I went quiet there.
And I've got my fist. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. That's the goal.
Like, yes.
That's the goal, without a doubt. Yep. And it's great. And when I look back, I mean, currently within Lara Murphy, we're 70% women, 30% LGBTQ plus. And we embrace that part of who we are and our makeup. And it's created an incredible culture and environment that I'm just so proud of. And if we can continue to build that and make it infectious and just get stuff done, just to just move forward. And we have such a finite time here together. And we've gone through one of the craziest things of our generation with the pandemic and all of what that brought and how it exposed so many inequalities in society and where we place value. It's quite kind of mind-boggling. And I do hope that some of the silver linings, and I do believe we will see some change, but it takes all of us to move forward and really make sure that we don't just slip back into that same rat race, if you will, and the old norms and just continue on. And I don't think we will. I don't think we have a choice. So I think that'll be great. But it's just thinking about what as a whole we can do and how we can continue to keep people connected, because that's been the biggest challenge for me, is that I love being around people. I part of so much of what I did was events and seeing people and learning about people's businesses and gaining that perspective from people. When you can be in the same room and read social cues and hear the stories and see the photos of family and friends or trips. And so much more, I think, will come of that, in the brainstorming of just even overhearing a conversation at work or when you're out, and being able to look at ways that we can figure things out in a much quicker fashion. So just like that connectivity, even though we're so fortunate. I mean, I think back, my house was built in 1912, and to think that there was a family that lived through a pandemic in my current home in 1918 with no Spotify, with no podcasts, with no Netflix, on and on and on. I mean, it's quite a harrowing thing for me to think about that. And certainly looking at the four walls that I live in, it's something that I really try to keep in check, because we are connected, but we need to get more connected in person. And I look forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perspective is everything, right?
It sure is.
We're so lucky to have you in our community, Lara.
Oh my gosh, you're so kind. I'm lucky to have you guys. It's a pleasure. The passion that I have for the city and the people, and I mean, I'm just blown away. And you touched on it earlier, Anita. I mean, you're right. Some of the businesses, I look at my friends, that have, whether it's dog training or restaurants or fitness studios, it's heartbreaking, and sheer luck. I mean, I for one, whether I was naive or not, I never thought that something like this could even happen, as far as, and this, the decimation across, I mean, the landscape of Calgary, as we know, it will be changed forever. But I do know, and I'm already seeing the shift and the sachet of how people are able to maneuver. And that's one of the biggest things that keeps me going every day and keeps me getting up and wanting to do more and more to give back to the city, because I am just blown away by the tenacity of the people that I have the honor of living in the city with, and business owners, and whether teachers or frontline workers. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I wish we had more time. I really do. But so we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much, Lara, for taking the time to share your inspiring story and important insights into women's entrepreneurship. And to our listeners, we invite you to check out the full series of conversations in our Women Redefining podcast, and visit the wekh.ca website for our See It, Be It database, where you will discover over 1,000 successful women entrepreneurs like Lara across Canada. Thank you. Thank you, Lara.
Thank you so much.